Hello. Well, you all know this is the unofficial holiday party of the comms industry, so it is so great. Meredith, I see you, lots of familiar faces. It's so great to be back for Axios Communicators Live. Thank you all so much for being here. Our fourth year, it's amazing to see how much it's grown and the familiar faces. I have the great pleasure of hosting the next segment, our View from the Top segment, with our great partners, Allison Worldwide. So please join me in welcoming to the stage Allison Worldwide's Executive Chair and the Vice Chair of Stagwell, Ray Day, and Harris X Managing Director, Dom Barkis. All right. Hello, welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome. All right. So we've got a full crowd tonight, a lot to get into. And, you know, the theme of our conversation is really tension and drama in this field, and there always is. You've both led major institutions, including Ford, IBM, Versant, over multiple decades. And one thing that hasn't changed in that time and may even be widening and intensifying is this perception gap between what CEOs say and think that they want out of comms leaders and what comms leaders think is best for organizations. Is that accurate? And what is driving this gap?
Yeah, maybe I can start out
as
the recovering chief comms officer in the group.
Do it.
Now on the agency side, we've for the last 5 years have been doing a study. We've been asking CEOs what they expect of the comms function. We've been asking comms leaders what they think the C-suite expects of the comm function. And the gap has not been narrowing. It's grown wider. And I would say, Dom, this year we're seeing an even bigger bifurcation, if I can call it, particularly around AI. I think there's a thirst in the C-suite for more AI implementation, and there's probably some denial from the comms leaders.
Absolutely. So some of the communications leaders view, or actually most of the communications leaders view AI as a partner, not a competitor. But we're definitely seeing a significant portion of CEOs, about a third of CEOs, saying that if AI continues to advance, that AI-powered comms platforms will add more value than internal comms teams or external agencies. So there's definitely some tension there.
And even in terms of writing a speech, you had a stat that when we put this out at Stagwell, all the speech writers on social media attacked us and said the data is flawed. But what was the data?
Yeah, so we gave CEOs two options. If you had if you needed to write an important speech or to give a keynote speech, and you had a choice between a custom AI trained tool that has read every single speech you have ever given, or a top comms professional, but no AI support. So 57% of CEOs said they would go with the AI versus 43% top comms professional. But comms leaders also agree. 55% said they would actually choose an AI tool to write a speech for their CEO.
And so, I mean, this really presents kind of a dual-sided problem, because there's eagerness everywhere for everyone to get acquainted. But the value of the comms leader, we talked about this before tonight. They've already earned the seat at the table. They still, though, in your term, like bifurcation, you're seeing still relegating some comms leaders to like executive comms, employee comms, and those that have external. How do comms leaders actually still show up and be able to present their value if CEOs have this perception that it's, you know, a role for executive comms, it's a role for employee comms?
Yeah, and the data in our survey show that the function is extremely valued in the C-suite, valued among the comms leaders as well. But we're also seeing two camps. And I was speaking to an executive recruiter who specializes in our space in the past year, and they were talking about one of the searches, and the incumbent was displaced because the CEO felt that CCO only cared about executive comms. And what that CEO said is, I don't need someone to just care about me. I need someone who is running the function. And I think it goes back to this argument that we've been having forever about, does comms have a seat at the table at the business? And it's an archaic discussion. And if you really, really are a business partner first and a comms leader second, the seat at the table discussion goes away, and you'll do far more than executive comms. So it's very practical, but what the data are supporting that as well.
And the data does support that. So about 2 in 3 CEOs say that their comms leaders truly understand the broader business strategy. And about 2 in 3 say that they always consult with their communications leaders before making major internal, external announcements. But that leaves 1 in 3 communications leaders who don't have a seat at the table. And as I mentioned previously, about 1 in 3 CEOs are saying like, hey, I'm ready for AI to take over. So I think that getting that seat at the table is critical right now.
So let's help this 1/3, this population. How do they break out of that stereotype? Because all CEOs, they're different. So you might have the good ones who understand the value. You might have the ones that are pigeonholing. If you are a comms leader working for a CEO who was pigeonholing them, what do you tell them to break out? How do they break out?
Yeah, I think if you're going to become a business partner, you will work in service of more than the CEO. And having been a CCO, there is always the danger that you are going to devote at the top of the function all of your attention to one individual. And when I've seen criticism of us in comms, it's when we become pigeonholed around one person and we treat them like really a publicist. We become a publicist. And that's not, according to the data and according to the anecdotal information, that's not what the C-suite is looking for. They're looking for a business partner. And one of the things I always had to check myself in with was, yes, you are serving, you report to the CEO, but you've got to be a part of that entire business table. You got to be a part of the peer group, and you need to add value to everyone. And it's the real balance you have to constantly walk.
But then there's the question of, do you want to work in an organization that is centralized in the comms functions or decentralized? Because if you want to be a business partner, isn't it better to be embedded in those lines of businesses depending on the size of the company or the industry?
Yeah, and this typically, the centralized or decentralized becomes an org chart discussion for many of us in the room, and it shouldn't be. If you are in charge of comms at the top of the comms or in the secondary or tertiary level, you really need to make sure that you are developing an overall strategy that leads the business and pulls the business together. I have a passion that comms at the end of the day is the one function that touches every part of a company, and it needs to pull the company together. And we have to play that role constantly. And
if you are in a role that you can't have that visibility, how do you invite yourself, right, to the meetings? I mean, oftentimes, and I used to work in comms way back when, you're the last line of defense. You get the product details and you say, that doesn't make any sense. And so how do you make sure you're in earlier in the process?
You need to add value. One of the things that we talk a lot about is when we look at how comms is measuring what we do and what we do for the business, we really are continuing, most of us, to fry on volume and sentiment. And really the big opportunity from a business standpoint is to start to unlock emotion. And if in any of your comms organizations, you're not measuring emotion, you are hurting the business and keeping the business from a really, really strong competitive opportunity. And to have a bigger presence, if you are giving the business predictive analytics, if you are unpacking emotion, and you are, as we call it at Allison, seeing around corners, if you are helping to get ahead of the curve, bringing that to the business table, you are going to be in demand, and you're going to get a lot of friends, and you're going to be fully integrated, and there won't be this person or that person.
All right, so unlocking emotions, making lots of friends in the business. I know you guys touched on AI at the beginning of the conversation. Let's end with a question about AI as well. How do comms leaders upskill themselves more quickly and show their value with CEOs trying out AI on their own and doing comms on their own?
Yeah, I'll let you start on what the data say on AI.
Yeah, so 95% of organizations say they use AI in communications function, and 96% of those report positive impact. And actually 30% of companies say that majority of their comms work within their organization is already being done by AI. So it's really time to get on that train and not be left behind, but understand how you can still add value as a leader, as a business leader.
And I think the word use AI is what we need to focus on. Are we experimenting with AI? Are we dabbling in it? Are we still in the wild, wild west? Or have we embraced AI in the comms function as a strategic partner, as our wing person, our wingman, if you will, working with a company today that is, on a crisis standpoint, using AI to ingest a decade of examples of the particular crisis they're working with and looking at the patterns and the trends and saying, when this happens, this is what typically is the outcome. Here's who it hurts. Here's the responses that have worked. And then what's our recommendation? That's how you make AI a strategic partner and use multiple tools. And so I think our opportunity within this profession is to move from experimentation and truly, truly strategic integration.
And back to the data, having the AI show you the data.
And I would just add that it's not just about how you use AI, but also staying ahead and making sure how do you protect your brand from AI disinformation? Because I'm sure all of us have seen that multiple brands have been caught up in these social discussions and crises. But what not a lot of people know yet is that a lot of that crisis has been driven by AI bots on platforms. So 55% of all the negative tweets on X about Cracker Barrel were bots. Same thing with American Eagle, same thing with Alt. So that is something for communications leaders to stay ahead and understand how AI works.
That's a successful use of AI as a tool.
Yeah, and Ray, just last word on this. How do you combat all of the noise that AI is now drumming up in the case that Dom just brought up?
First of all, you've got to be constantly not just monitoring it, but being predictive. And one of the things that I learned early on in this profession is we tend to fry on words in the comms function, whereas people who really study crisis, particularly at the government level, they're looking at patterns and shapes and colors. And that's really what we need to do, is to become far more sophisticated on the data analytics. And I think our opportunity is to use AI to eliminate the cleanup in IL6 and to spot it well ahead of the problem to begin with.
I love it. Thank you both so much for joining me.
Thank you.
Thank you to Allison
Great to be here.
for partnering with us.